Greetings, welcome to another book publishing session. My name is Gabriel, and this is a series of videos on the real world work of publishing books on Amazon, KDP, paperback, and ebooks. Right now, I've been trying to, this is a title, it's my second day of seriously working on it. John Redding Goes to Sea by Zora Neale Hurston. I'm basically ready to go, except I need to do an illustration of the author for the end about the author section. I did a previous video on Ernest Hemingway, and I want to jump in and share this one that I've been doing on Zora Neale Hurston. I'm going to just get started from the beginning. All right, so let's jump into it. All right, this is a new Blender file. I'm going to go to bring in an image that I've selected that I would like to use as the base, the reference image. I'm going to go in and do insert a new mesh plane. And this is actually one of the first published works by Zora Neale Hurston, John Redding Goes to Sea. It was published originally in 1921 in her college literary newspaper magazine. But the edition I used as a reference, the source material I used for this edition was a 1926 publication in Opportunity magazine. So Blender's taking a little bit to load. It does struggle a little bit with my recording software combined with Blender. I'm using an old laptop, but that's the whole point of this series is you can do the work. You don't need a lot to do the work. It's not about expensive tools. So I'm brought in the image. I'm going to scale it up. What I like about this is a younger, I think this is from Zora Neale Hurston's college era. So that's one of the reasons I selected this. You know, there's a lot of iconic images of her wearing a hat, but this expression and the wide open arms I think is pretty cool. So this is going to be my base. So I inserted that. That's, you know, now I'm using Blender grease pencil. Let me get the pen, and I'm gonna get my settings, I think where I want them. All right, let's try that. So this is something that I really enjoy doing. I've been doing it for a number of years, and by that I mean illustrations in Blender grease pencil. Blender is a pretty complicated program, so it can be intimidating to start, but if you invest time in it, it really pays off. It's open source, free, and I really like, you know, it's very, very powerful. It has a learn curve. Okay, this image, you know, it may look like just, but I argue that's more complicated than that. Yes, using a reference image or reference images. To make is an artistic decision, and yes, it's inspired image, but it's what another artist version of this image would look. And there's this isn't about, you know, this is I bought a book, and one of the reasons for today is to show the world Zora Neale Hurston, who is one of the best writers, one of the best of the three extended, and this is really a tribute a little bit to her. Now, which is fine. That's what you're with you. A little bit and take shape. I'm just sketching things out. So I do a layer of and a shadow or color, and I do a contract. Okay, so I'm coming at you for a day in Massachusetts and looking farmland. It's been a little tough. I had some properties I was using, but I don't know if it's going to pan out. So I have to look at these. You need this grid. Like I heard the land movement like that. I don't know if it completely firing all the vegetables, salad, potato, and then meat chickens. So regulations, and I'm all for doing safe. Some of them and I'm with things right now. Check out Maine, check out this community, vulnerable people. Basically, style and expression. And really, the idea of money, I'm just kind of free a little bit of image. Don't hold me to anything. My belief or anything. That's not what's not. What about the idea? Hey, I'm a public writer. I'm bringing it for illustration for paperback radio on the seat. If you're familiar with what this is, a short comments for place that I grew up in. It's in the world. Maybe that's why I doesn't perform reality. That's the year he wants to see. He wants to. It has a very powerful description. Name is and the book is the paternal grandfather. Words, her father John is the name. So and it's interested in letter freedom. That's very telling. Prolix this book. She's simple. I think that main character longing to leave home in small town out and see mighty next. Now what she at the storm the she was an inspiration. Came out of the Harlem Renaissance, which means Scribus, a kind of a paperback version of and ways or tales from this American folk characters different than the case at Walt Disney in his now. And now I've just decided a series of one of the 13 books. Maybe time this video. But one thing is I get more specific notices. There is some Zornil drenched light is out handle and paper. It has to be personal. Not really native Zornil level terms. Seeing if there's anything to do about sense of the kind of confidence. I'll just put up. Okay, so these are very refined. Not much, but we're getting this. So I have a line. So now what I do is I'm going to add some shadow. So go here. should probably save this too. Blender's acting a little slow, so that's always a big reminder and a warning, you know, to save this work. Now, I really enjoy these watch me work type videos. There's this guy, Blended Planet, who I talk about quite a bit. You know, it's kind of a long form check-in conversation. You know, ideally, I would, you know, if someone is interested in what I'm doing, or they have questions, you know, getting a little bit of interactivity would be really neat. But the benefit of doing it this way is I'm doing the work anyway. Yes, it might slow me down just a little bit, but I'm making progress on the work. But I'm trying to do it in a way where, you know, I get to share a little bit. So, okay, it took me a while to save it. I put another layer beneath the lines, and this is going to be a shadow. I might do two shadows. That's what we can do here. I know one a little. So, an interesting about this portrait drawing, I'm not caught on eyes. So, it's kind of big. Okay. Dark, you know, the hat and things like that. Here's a contrast. If before, doing an image like this, and you know, you don't have to find an artistic style. You know, you can do whatever artistic style resonates with you. But the message truncate is Blender is a great, free, powerful program. When you're publishing in the public, certain requirements for that, you know, they have to do some kind of contribution, and just like copies, or the original text, any contribution to illustrations. So if you're going to feel well, illustrations, I'm a fan. There's other things out there you can do, but you know, if you're just illustrations, is you have to do 10 and if there's certain words and vision for 10 environments, however, you know, that can be generalizations like good. So you have to do that. Do is real content that fans what engines are. You know, there's no other object as it can be fun. To share. Now, let's see where I'm going to turn the. Okay, so you can see where we're getting at now. Now this is. Obviously not there yet, but you can see how this is something different than the photograph. I'm going to do another layer beneath this layer. You don't always have to do it like this, but since I'm dealing really with line and two materials, additional materials, I'm just going to separate them all out on an individual layer. A benefit with Blender Grease Pencil is you can change all of this stuff after the fact. So from the thickness of lines, the color of the lines, all the stuff like that. Blender is very powerful in, you know, there's a high degree of editing and customization that you can do after the fact to move things around. It's very, very powerful in that way. So and there's just an impression of what's saying is that this is not for the impression of the shape. That one kind of make the other line went in and make the talking point. You know, even though I previously it was kind of a great change. Okay. Now we got chapter. Let's see. So what I do now is image that I'm going to upload it and I'll do a copy of the paperback where I'll do a fine proofread checking, and then we'll have that author come on the paper on the version. And again, this was a test to see how to get the technical right sounds. So like it's the way of like all like twins and of books. So it's to kind of see how like that. Well, yeah. Okay. Then anyway, talk about looking where I don't. Again, let's check. I might need to balance or adjust some color a little bit. Okay. So what do we have going on here? It's possible if we might be good if we adjust the colors a little bit. And again, then the hat is looking good. I think the left bag is a little bit too, it might need some of that gray. So let me put in a little of the gray, and that, of the colors. We're dealing with white, which is empty space. We're dealing with very dark black, and then we're dealing with this gray kind of middle. And I think that it needs a little bit of that middle gray. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna take this color. Adjust alpha just a little bit. I'm making it more transparent is what I'm really doing it, but the effect is it lightens it a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same with the other material. And when you get into more complicated drawings, it's best practice to kind of label these things. All right, here's where you can see a nice play. All right, if we go too light, it all kind of fades away. Brought it back a little bit. I'm going to try making the gray a little darker. Oops. So let's go here. I'm not trying to, Blender's acting a little funky and moving around the image. It's not my intent. I'm okay with that. Okay. So one thing when a program like Blender starts doing stuff you're not wanting it to do, it's good to save. Again, I'm probably pushing it just a little bit with this recording while, oh man, it's doing it again. I have a setting somewhere where it thinks I want to move the whole image. So I just want to move my view. See, move the view. That's okay. So I'm going to darken this just a little bit. And I think we might be getting to what I want. So right now it's the white is a solid color white, but I go into this setting, I make it transparent, which might look pretty alarming to you, but trust me, this is because the white for this image is going to be the white of the paper on the paperback. So let's render this out, and before we go too far, see how we're looking. And again, it's a little sketch, it's a caricature or a portrait. Zora Neale Hurston, I think the idea is the vibe of like the glowing wonderful, adventurous. John Redding Goes to Sea. There's the travel kind of situation here. So let's see how this does. I'm going to save this. And let's just, I can maybe, if I'm not happy with it, maybe it's one of these things where I can sleep on it, come back and, make some adjustments. But I'm going to insert this into Scribus. Now, Scribus is the program where I lay out my paperback books. 5x8 is the size I generally do. This book is basically ready to go. So I want to get this up. I want to get my author copy ordered. I want to see how this looks when it's printed. So right here, I have a placeholder. I'm going to insert an image. John Redding Goes to Sea, draft images, Zora Neale Hurston portrait. Got to adjust the image to the frame. Boom. Now the image, there's a couple things. So it's not my favorite. And maybe I can crop. What do I like? I like the glowing and outstretched. The hands are somewhat weak, and I can maybe do a crop situation. So let's see what that looks like real quick. And what I can do, an interesting thing about Scribus, right? So I can set the image where I want it. Let's say right here. I'm going to save this. I got out of Blender. Let's go into GIMP. I had a similar instance where I was, what I'm going to do is crop this image. I've tried to do it in Microsoft, just the general image viewer, because sometimes that is a fast, easy way to crop. But I tried doing that in a previous video, and it was having problems loading. So I'm going to try GIMP. GIMP is a free open source image generation software, image editing software, very similar to Photoshop. All right, yeah, slow down. I'm kind of tumbling over my words. So image manipulation program is what they call it. This is free, open source, a little bit of a learning curve. I'm not an expert at it, but I can do what I want, and certainly I can crop with it. So I'm going to crop this image and then take a look again and see if I have something ready enough for my author draft. Again, we're always doing the balance of making high quality work. You want to not do sloppy work, but at the same time, this is something for market that I'm trying to sell. People aren't buying this book to see Gabriel's illustration of Zora Neale Hurston. They're buying this book to read Zora Neale Hurston's short story. So as long as I'm not really negatively impacting that, let's try this crop. Okay, boom. I'm not going to save this file. This is just to see if the concept, if we're on the right track. So I'm going to export this as a PNG. And here's a little trick which usually works for me. So I'm going to replace the existing file, Zora Neale Hurston Portrait. This is what I just exported from Blender 5 minutes ago. So if I use the exact same name and it says, warning, this already exists, you want to replace it. If I say yes, it's going to do its thing. I export. Exporting as a PNG, again, preserves the transparency, so the white of the paper will be the transparency. I'm not going to save this GIMP project because I just want to see how this looks. So now if I go back into let me reopen Scribus. This is just to see if this works. This isn't the best example, but the idea is you can lay out your book in Scribus and put in all of your images, and then you have a folder where all your image names are. And then if you go back, let's see if it happens. Did it work? Boom. Yeah, so it worked kind of. So my revised image is there. I learned this from Blended Planet, and I think it's a really neat way of working, a workflow of continuous improvement. Right, so what did we accomplish with doing this? A couple things. One, like I said, the hands were the weakest. I mean, there wasn't a lot of detail in the hands. The hands themselves were cropped off in the original image, the photo. So we got rid of them. But two, because this is a 5x8 paperback, you know, if you're going to do illustrations, you probably want vertical portrait oriented and not landscape in order to get the maximum size, because you can make them as wide as you can and then make the image bigger. So that's the primary thing we accomplished. And you know, I think the focus, the part that I liked, was the kind of glowing expression, the beaming, and then a little hint of travel. And I think we got all of that there. So there is a question if this side of the jacket and the bag next to it kind of blend too vaguely, and does the jacket need a line? Or am I misseeing it and actually the line is here? I don't know. Is that a problem? Do I not like it? I don't know. That's the thing I'm going to sleep on. But what I'm going to do now is, that was the last piece I was waiting on. I'm going to save and export this. I'm going to first see if there's any errors or issues. But I'm going to export this as a PDF. I'm going to name it John Redding Goes to Sea 5x8, number 1. Now, look at that. Sometimes it'll pop up if there's any errors. There doesn't appear to be any errors, so it's exporting out. And that was my goal for today, is I'm going to give it one more look to catch any major errors when I have a preview mode on Amazon Kindle. I've done that in some prior videos, but I want to get this up and get this out there. So I'm going to upload this to Amazon, order an author copy. Then that's when I have the author copy, that's where I can make the final review, see how the image looks when it's actually